So for the past month or so, I've been wanting to make a video based on scratch building. So I finally bit the bullet. Why not? I've been kind of tired of sculpting lately, so let's go. I binged these three channels right here, and now I have enough brain power and enough skills as an artist to make something decent. As for the size and the style of model I'm gonna be making, I decided to base it around your typical 144 scale Gundam, specifically this high grade revive of the RX 782. And also because I've already tried my hand at making a customized or original Gundam of my own, but the results weren't the best. As you can see, I have a crippling addiction to chocolate ice cream. Okay, that's a bad joke. I'm not gonna put that in. Okay then, so what all materials am I gonna be using? It's mostly, yeah, it's mostly trash. It's just old components and parts of stuff which I found over the past few years, and I put them in a box. If I looked at it and I thought, hey, I can turn this into something, I put it in the box. It's pretty simple. So here's all the stuff. Here's like container of sketch pen connectors. You can get these from connector pens. I used a lot of them, so I have a bunch of these. And then you have like the arms of my old tripod stand, like a breadboard for plastic pieces, some mechanics kit stuff. I'm going to be taking out the things which I think I can make into something, do a rough construction using tape. Out of which there were a few failed attempts in the beginning, but hey, I finally settled on this, and this is what I went with for the final model as well. So these are all the parts I will be using to make the model. Now, keen-eyed viewers may notice there is only one arm right there. For anybody who's wondering where the second one is, I lost it. Yeah, it's not like I made it and then forgot that I had to film this part. No. I lost it. Let's just go and make the torso first. Yeah, jump cut, editing guy. Alright, so the torso was fairly simple to make. I used a connector pen joint in order to, make the waist of the figure. I used an old Transformers elbow joint to make the neck of the robot. And finally, I used two like, what do you call those? Two joysticks from an old helicopter controller I had as the thrusters on the back of the robot, so that I can actually articulate and make it look a little bit more interesting. Right, I attached more bits and pieces onto it as it went on through the whole process to make it look more interesting and make it look better once it's painted up. And the torso turned out better than expected. As you can see, the main like front part of the torso is composed of like a broken switch. I had to take it apart, and like a few wires going through it to the back. The back looks a little empty right now, I know, but I do add like a canister at the back off camera later to make it look more like a fuel tank, but basically to create more visual interest. Now, when it came to the legs, they were a completely different monster when compared to the torso, because I had planned them out, but not to the point where they were extremely detailed. So I had to make up a lot of the details as it went along, especially the thrusters, the wires, and all that. But it was quite interesting. I used some caps of pens and like the parts of a pen in order to make the thrusters themselves, and the front part of the leg consisted of a wooden clothes peg, which I had broken into two pieces and then further destroyed to repurpose. And this really worked out. I further put like mount board onto the wood clothes peg in order to create more depth and more visual interest, like I said before. And the back of the leg consisted of like wires, straws, which I had made to use as pistons. So here are the leg units, and as you can see, I changed up the feet and I made some really rough looking side skirts, which I will later detail, and I will add parts to the front to make them more structurally stable and not fall off whenever I breathe on them. As far as that goes, I also added stuff to the feet, like I said before, to make it look less like a human and more like a knight. And now finally, for the back skirt, which is something I always planned to do, but I never figured out how to do it, Take a bunch of these, right, and just, and there you go. I use the screws in order to create a hinge so that I can attach the racket part on the back and cut it out of the back skirt. This will attach back to here, and I'll put some thrusters onto it later. The head was fairly simple. It was just a lot of sanding and gluing involved and drilling, because I had to install the wires. They weren't of any functional significance, but they looked cool. I used a transformer's foot, two parts of a glue cap, as well as a few wires to make the whole thing. I later did add a few components to the sides of the head, a faceplate, and an antenna to make it a little bit more visually interesting. So far out of all of the components I had made, the arm was definitely the most time consuming, because I had already made one before and it took time to get the accuracy of both of them lined up and make them symmetrical. Also, the shoulder pad I used was like a car door, and onto that shoulder pad I used my pin vise, the drill I used to drill out some holes to make it look like weathering or bullet holes. Quite fun. That part was destroying one model. Great. The arms were like the actual arms of a transformer. They were repurposed. I didn't really make my own for this one because I already had them lying around. The hands I did augment the hands. I cut off part of the hands and attached a wire skeleton in there, over which I later sculpted on a molded hand. As for the blasters on the side of the arm, I used some old pen refills as well as some cotton swab tubes to make those. Attaching some wires onto those made it look more cohesive, and then they were glued onto the arm itself. And as for bulking up the arm, I used a popsicle stick, cut it up into thin pieces, and then attached that around the edges of the top and the bottom of the lower arm. With all that done, the parts are now complete and we can finally move on to masking as well as priming them. So here they are. Here's the waist unit. There's a hinge joint on the back. I added thrusters, as I said. You have the head. I added some small accents on the sides of camera. It's focused. You have the torso, which has two rotating and moving thrusters in the back. You have the legs, onto which I did a little bit of sculpting to make the parts even. So at the point where the mount board meets the plastic, it's a little less irregular. And finally, the arms. I sculpted on the hand, and it has all the points of articulations of the finger, just like the other one. And finally, I made this gun off camera based off a few reference sketches I had done. Now let's move on to the priming. Welcome to my roof, where dreams come to die. Now this was a very well ventilated place, so that's where I did the priming of the entire figure. I split it up into smaller parts, and from that I sprayed on the primer in small light coats until it was completely covered. I did this whole thing with proper precautions. I wore a mask, I wore a glove in the hand I was using to spray paint, and it turned out good. I didn't inhale any of it, and as far as I know, my brain cells are still intact. With the priming now complete, it was time to color it in, which is one of the most scary things in every video I make, because I never planned this ahead. This time I actually did. I went into my digital painting software and I tried a bunch of colors out. These are the ones which I tried out. I made like a whole sheet for them. Here they are. And then I selected the colors. I settled on the purple ones because, hey, I like the color purple, it's pretty cool. And these are the paints I used. I used white, purple and black for the base paints, because I was going to mix light purple and a very, very dark grey for the main ones. And here are some of the parts right after I base coated them. As you can see, I did use a very dark, almost black grey, and I used two different shades of purple. One for the actual base color and second was for the shading and a little bit of weathering. Now as for the small accents and the details of the paint, I used orange, yellow, bronze as well as red. Orange and yellow were mixed into a very like orangish yellow, and I used the bronze and red in different places because they complemented black and purple quite well. And finally I used pearl white for all the dry brushing. And here are all the pieces after I had painted them up. And in order to make the yellow less bright, I did later go in and like dry brush it or like weather it with a little bit of brown wash, but that's not important right now. I did use the yellow and the bronze in a way so that the monotony of purple and black is broken up and it looks more visually interesting. With all the parts painted up, all that's left is to varnish them and then let them dry. After I had varnished them with the same precautions I took for priming, I let them dry for at least an hour in the sun. So here's something new I'm going to try. A community showcase. I asked for you guys to send in your creations over at an email which is in the description, and a bunch of you did. So here they are in a montage form. Thanks for sending them in, and I'll see you guys after the reveal. Thanks for everybody's submissions. A special thanks to my Instagram followers who helped me by giving me feedback along the way. Be sure to like, share and subscribe. And here's the final figure.